Welcome back, everyone, for another Mast Cell 360 live show. I'm Jamie Fries-Miller, your host and health coach here at Mast Cell 360. Whether you're joining us live or catching the replay later, we're so glad to have you with us today. These lives are all about empowering you on your mast cell journey with practical insights, expert guidance, and support of our amazing community. I'm really excited about today's topic, which is what craniosacral therapy is, how it can calm mast cells and support healing. And we are going to be joined by expert guest, Sari Lewis, and of course, our lead practitioner, Kimberly Quirk. So I'll bring them up in just a second. While we're waiting for people to join us live, feel free to drop in the comments where you're tuning in from today. And if you're in the United States, I hope everyone had a lovely Thanksgiving. Okay, so quick disclaimers. Today's presentation is for informational and educational purposes. This presentation is not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness. Please be sure to discuss any health recommendations with your healthcare provider. And just a reminder that some of the links shared during this presentation or on our website are affiliate links, which means Mast Cell 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through our links. We only recommend products that we love and use personally or use in the Mast Cell 360 clinic. Some quick announcements. If you haven't been on our lives in a while, we are now on Substack. You can check us out at mastcell360.substack.com. And if you have joined us over on Substack, I would love to hear what you guys think of it now that it's been a few weeks. And if you haven't grabbed our holiday gift guide yet, you can find that at mastcell360.com/gift guide. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our special guest, and I'll bring her and Kimberly up in just a second. Sari brings decades of experience in occupational therapy and over 20 years of practicing gentle biodynamic craniosacral therapy. She founded Sari Hands PLC in 2003 and has dedicated her career to helping people, from newborns to seniors, reclaim stability, calm, and nervous system balance through compassionate and individualized bodywork. Sari's approach emphasizes restoring fluid dynamics and nervous system regulation through light, hands-on techniques that support the brain, spinal cord, fascia, cerebral spinal rhythm, and her work offers a safe, deeply calming path to support healing for chronic pain, trauma recovery, nervous system dysregulation, and overall wellness. Let's bring her to the stage now. Welcome, Sari and Kimberly.
Good morning.
Okay, let's see. So what are we going to be talking about today? Today we are going to be talking about craniosacral therapy and what it actually is. I feel like it's a pretty broad term, and a lot of people don't actually know what practitioners do when we say craniosacral. So this is going to be an amazing conversation. We're going to talk about how it differs from other forms of bodywork. So like a lot of people are familiar with chiropractic care, but we've found that, myself included, have actually reacted. Our mast cells can be reactive to things like chiropractic care. So we're going to be discussing why this light touch therapy may help calm symptoms and who may benefit from it most and who may want to wait, right? There's always, just because we share information here, it might not be right for you, and it may not be right for you right now. So we like to share this information so that our audience can build their toolkits. And of course, if we have questions, we will try to do a live Q&A. So just quick reminders there. Feel free to drop, everyone watching, feel free to drop your questions into the comments as the show is going on. Only ask your question one time. We're monitoring those. It helps us keep track of questions getting answered. And please keep it on the topic of today's show, nervous system regulation, craniosacral therapy. And please understand that we're unable to answer in-depth personal health questions. Okay. So all of our housekeeping is done. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation. Let's start with, let's see. Sari, can you just kind of go into what got you started in this line of work? Do you have a personal story to share, or what led you to the path that you're on today helping people?
Well, how long is the podcast?
Short version, elevator speech version.
Well, I'm going to give it a little longer than elevator speech because I think it's pertinent.
Yeah.
At age 14, I was lucky enough to have a guidance counselor in high school that guided me toward occupational therapy. So I learned early on that I wanted to be in a healthcare field where I could help people have a better quality of life. And after finishing college and my internships, I had $300 and a rusty Datsun, and I drove to Arizona and started applying for jobs. And not all hospitals at that time even had occupational therapy clinics or departments in them. So I got started, even though occupational therapy's been around for a long time, it wasn't really very mainstreamed until a little bit later into probably the 80s. And around that same time, managed care came around into insurance. And what it ultimately did was that it tied our hands as practitioners and limited what we could do with our patients. So I felt like every day I was going to work with $1 for every single one of my patients. And I was able to give them about 20 cents, maybe 25 cents on a good day. And I really progressively got more disillusioned with the profession that had been my life's work and my goal. And so I started to explore options. I knew I wasn't going to go open a boutique, so I had to find a different way to do therapy. And I had a colleague who I knew of who had been taking some craniosacral therapy classes. And it seemed like she was getting results that I wasn't seeing anywhere else. So we joined together. We formed a business partnership for a handful of years. And then I went independent back in 2003, which is crazy. So I've had my solo practice since then in craniosacral therapy. So once we partnered up, I started taking all different sorts of classes and being on teaching teams. And it's my passion.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the long elevator pitch because we were on a high rise.
So can you share kind of with our audience or help our audience understand from like a high level overview, what is biodynamic craniosacral therapy?
Well, there are definitely different styles of craniosacral therapy. And back in the 1940s, osteopathic physicians started to discover that the bones in the head moved. And so at that time, they did everything they could to help people move. They would literally stand up on tables and throw their extreme weight onto people's heads to make things change. And then Dr. Sutherland discovered that a lighter touch was really more effective, and he became more spiritual, started looking more at embryology and fluid dynamics, and he really split the profession between those people who wanted to be more aggressive with their approach and those people who wanted to be more gentle. So the basics of biodynamic craniosacral therapy are in embryology, in the fluid dynamics of how we develop embryologically, and then in the impact to our tissues and nervous systems from conception to death. So the essence of biodynamic craniosacral therapy and craniosacral therapy in general is that we all have perfect health inside of us. Even when we are ill, even when we are dying, we still have perfect health. And that's what we strive to help tap into with craniosacral therapy, mainly by creating an environment that's very calm, very safe, very nurturing, very present.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
so
we talk about that. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, as an aside, biomechanical craniosacral therapy came around more in the 1970s through Dr. Upledger, who was originally a physical therapist. And he kind of discovered this flow in the cerebrospinal fluid and brought his work of teaching mechanical methods of working with the cranial structures and with the spine to the public. So he teaches his course, well, he's no longer with us, but his courses were taught to physical therapists, occupational therapists, osteopathic physicians, dentists, speech pathologists, massage therapists. So that works probably better known because more people have been exposed to it.
Yeah, so can you briefly kind of explain the difference between biochemical and biodynamic?
So in biomechanical, there are specific hand positions used for all the different structures in the sacrum, at the bottom of the spine, and up in the cranium, all the structures in the head. So those are designed to help to create more symmetry in those bones. So even though we develop based on bending and extending and rotating all those different sorts of positions as we're developing, once we are developed, having symmetry within the structures is beneficial. It helps the whole system to relax. Biodynamic is a much quieter, gentler approach. A lot of people call it nothing therapy because it looks like nothing. It's like watching water boil or paint dry, but it's very, very gentle. And the whole idea, as I said, is that it should be calm and safe.
All right. How is craniosacral different from other bodywork methods like massage, chiropractic, osteopathic adjustments, or standard physical therapy?
That's a great question. I get that question a lot. And if we look at all those other modalities, those are all external to internal modalities. So something is being done from the outside to create a change on the inside. In craniosacral therapy, similar to Reiki or other energy types of treatments and acupuncture, we're trying to help create an environment for the body to heal from the inside out.
Okay. Yeah, I liked the description you had of the nothingness, because I actually took my son to a biodynamic craniosacral therapist first before I even tried it. It was included in like the package when he got his expanders. And I loved that it was included. I was like, this is amazing. This is like, I knew that it was I was at the right, clinic for his expanders because they had this as part of it. And I watched it first done on him and I was like, okay. And then like 2 weeks later, he was like, when do I go back? And I was like, interesting.
They like the change they feel in their bodies.
Yeah. And then, so I've since had it done too. And still hard, even though I've had it done and experienced it, it's still hard to explain to people. So thank you so much for giving us that like wonderful overview.
Well, even though I've been doing it for, 30 years, I sometimes feel like the more I explain it, the less I even understand it. And maybe that's part of the magic and the beauty of this modality is getting out of our own way. So as a practitioner, getting myself into a space where I'm not trying to change things, I'm not trying to do things, I'm trying to facilitate things. And again, that's created through the environment of my physical space, through my calm demeanor, everything about the environment really to help people to be comfortable.
What is something that many people kind of misunderstand about this type of work that you do, and what would you like people to know instead?
I think it probably gets a little bit of a reputation for being woo-woo therapy because it is so really truthfully magical. So I guess the thing I would want people to know is that this is based in science. There's research out there. It's continuing to expand. And the work that we do and the changes we see in people make it really worthwhile.
Yeah. Kimberly, do you have any questions you want to ask?
I think we're going to get to it because I saw it on the, but it's more like who should, and,
okay.
Around that. I also had my own experience. So I also, you may not know this, have Mast Cell. So I've had my experience with craniosacral as well. And it was interesting and eye-opening and gave me more clues to what's going on inside for sure. And I love that idea of facilitating from inside versus pushing from the outside. And I think that's where a lot of those boundaries around where things are directed and coming from are so important for Mast Cell, because Mast Cell is about getting back to safety in our body. And sometimes that feels unsafe if it's coming from an external source versus self-driven from internal.
So we have so many different options of how we can work with craniosacral therapy. I can work totally off someone's body if they're not comfortable with touch. I can start at their feet if they're not comfortable with having work around their head. I can use a beautiful position called the Pietà, which is after one of the images of Mary holding Jesus in Rome, a pretty famous statue of her holding him in her lap. And her hand position is actually in an open hand position, cradling him under his shoulder and underneath his hip. And that area is very, very nurturing and calming to my clients.
What are some common benefits of this therapy? I think would be great for people to know.
So I would say the primary thing would be nervous system calming. Everybody can benefit from that. I think, unfortunately, right now, metabolically, we have a very unhealthy world. Probably 80+% of the population has some sort of metabolic disorder. That includes high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, responses to toxicities, responses to vaccines, long COVID, autoimmune issues. It's just so prevalent. And the bottom line for that is that everyone needs to have their nervous system calmer. And I mean, if you've ever listened to anything from Dr. Nathan, it's the very first thing he says. You have to address the nervous system before you can address anything else.
It's what we say here too. It's the top of our protocol.
Exactly. And I'm right there with you. So, some of my clients come in and they're exhausted. They might just lie down on the table and just pass out. And that's what they need at the time. Some people come in and they have a monkey brain and they can't turn it off. So then we use techniques to help to slow that down. And we may dialogue during the session, and the dialogue may not even sound therapeutic, but it's designed to meet each person where they're at so that they can feel comfortable, so that while I have my hands on them, while we're getting their nervous system to slow down, and the rhythm of that fluid, that cerebrospinal fluid that nourishes our brain and spinal cord, gets to slow down so that the body can calm and slow and hopefully get to some silence and some real restoration.
Yeah. How soon do most people notice improvements after, or maybe does it take a few times, or what is the typical client or patient journey look like?
That varies greatly. So I have a lot of clients who will have amazing first sessions and really notice some big differences. And I find that that's one of the things that gives them some hope, that the circumstance that they're in, no matter how dire it is or how long they've been struggling with it, that there's some hope for them because we've seen a glimmer of that health, of that wholeness, of that calmness in them. I generally recommend for my clients to plan to have 3 sessions over the course of several weeks for the cumulative effect. That helps to determine whether or not we're a good fit and if the modality is helping for them. And then I do have other resources in terms of other people or places to send people if we're not a good fit. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's nice to have the resources.
Yeah. Can you share a moment, maybe with a client or in your own life, when this approach created a shift that surprised even you?
I think I want to give 2 examples here because they're so very different. So I was working with a client who had had a stroke, and her stroke was about 6 months prior. And she came in to me and she was very frustrated because she had been to therapy and they basically gave her a stack of plastic cones. And they said, we can't do anything else with you, but take these cones home. And when you can stack the cones, then, call us and come on back in and we'll see if we can do some more therapy with you. So I just met her with the same approach I always meet with, which is that gentleness, the calmness. And at the end of her session, just for curiosity, I held her arm that was partially paralyzed gently in my hands. And I said, I'm going to just gently lift your arm a little bit. And I want you to think about lifting your arm while I lift it. And she lifted her arm off my hands up in the air. And then she looked at her arm and she looked at me and she said, what just happened? And I said, that's what's inside you. That's what we have to work with. So we did have a little joke that she was going to go back to the therapy clinic and return the cones and also flip them the bird just to show that she had that sort of motion in her hand. I don't think she ever did it, but it made us laugh just to think about the fact that we believed in something when other people lost their belief. So that's my one example. The other one is more recent. I had a pretty high-powered executive guy come in. His wife talked him into it. He wasn't really even sure why he was there, but he came in with 2 cell phones, okay? And so he silenced his phones, he put them down, he had his session. At the end of his session, he got off the table, he went and used the restroom, he left the office, got in the car, and started to drive away with his wife. And then I discovered 2 cell phones in my office that were not mine. Thankfully, I had his wife's phone number in my contacts, and I called her and I said, hey, guess what? He forgot both of his cell phones. And she said, oh my gosh, we'll come back and get them. And they did. And I contacted the doctor who sent him my way because I felt like this was really miraculous, that this high-powered guy could get off the table, leave my office, and have at least 15 minutes pass where he hadn't thought to look at either one of his phones. So it's kind of a silly example, but it's pretty powerful on some levels.
Yeah. I lose my phone all the time. I don't think that's the same thing.
No, for you, it would be more a matter of you remembering your phone, and that would be the miraculous part.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about what it's like when people come in and they're on your table. Can you walk somebody through what to expect, like if they were to come and have an appointment?
Sure. So depending on where they came from, if they found me themselves, then we'll chat a little bit first to see what their goals are. If they're coming from a referral from a physician, then I have to kind of go outside of the boundaries of craniosacral therapy and do a brief evaluation. And that's a postural evaluation that basically looks to see, is one shoulder higher or are the hips rotated, things like that. And so when I'm done with that little evaluation that I do standing up and lying down on my table, them lying on my table, basically I set that piece of paper aside with the whole idea that there isn't anything wrong with them. We had to kind of do this little checklist for the doctor, but there's nothing wrong with them. They are perfectly healthy inside, and that's what we're going to be tapping into and looking for, and not looking for what's wrong. So my room is dimly lit. I use soft music in the background, which some practitioners are opposed to. I do it because I'm in an executive suite, and it kind of just neutralizes the space in terms of sound. My table is ridiculously padded. The guy who reupholstered it told me nobody pads their table like that. And I basically asked him to please do it. So my table's very, very comfortable. It's a traditional massage table, but a stationary one. So my clients, if they are able, and most of them are, to lie comfortably on their back, I will support them with pillows or bolsters or whatever they need. I often encourage my clients to bring a small blanket or a shawl with them so they can be covered and kind of hold the energy in a little bit. And then I will begin in a lot of different ways. Very often I begin at the shoulders and do just a little bit of gentle structural work just to help open things up. Everybody's tight in their shoulders nowadays, and everybody can benefit from having better posture. So I generally start there because it puts me in a position to comfortably chat with the person if they need it, or explain things if they need it, so that I'm close to them in that regard. And it gives me a way to read their nervous system a little bit. So if I see their color changing a lot, if I see their breathing changing, if I see them fidgeting on the table, I will, of course, check in with them, but I might also adjust my approach and go a little bit further away from their head to start with, just to help them get grounded first. My touch is very gentle. In biomechanical craniosacral therapy, they teach us in the beginning that the pressure we're using is the weight of a nickel. So if you have an opportunity to grab a nickel at some point and balance it on each of your fingers, you'll see how very, very light that touch can be. In biodynamic work, we often use what's called disappearing fingers, where we literally pull our fingers away from our own bones to get more into the fluid body. And so our hands will disappear, but the work will continue. Let's see. So while the clients are on the table, depending on what they're there for or what we are addressing, I will generally look to do a little bit of a tune-up on the cranial structures. And again, in the biodynamic model, we're typically working with a slower pace of that fluid. So I'm working with that slow rhythm and again, monitoring how the person is responding on the table and moving around quietly, gently, magically. I think you kind of get the fact that I love my work. I'm so grateful and gratified every day by what I get to do helping people. So to decide at age 14 and still be doing it at age, never mind, is really a joy for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are some ways or what are some things that people can do kind of support their bodies maybe before and or after the appointment?
Great question. So I encourage my clients to wear comfortable clothes. Blue jeans and belts and hoods and things like that are not typically comfortable for resting. So I encourage that. I encourage my clients to drink a lot of water after their sessions, especially. I'm a fan of ice personally for most things. So 10 to 15 minutes of ice can help in a lot of ways. It can help with pain. It can help with swelling. Those are the things we're most familiar with. But most importantly, it can help with the fluid nutrition. Because when we put ice onto an area, the vessels constrict, which is why if we put an ice pack onto your leg, it would first turn white. And then when we took it off, it would turn pink, because those vessels, when they open up again, send a fresh whoosh of nutrition into the area. So icing for most areas for that circulation and for discomfort are really helpful. For me, the exceptions would be menstrual cramps or jaw pain. And typically those respond better to heat or moist heat.
All right, Kimberly, your section. How does someone know? Feel free to jump in to ask any clarifying questions too, Kimberly. But how does somebody know they are ready for craniosacral or that craniosacral therapy might benefit them?
Yeah.
You want to
You're asking me?
Oh, well, you can answer that.
What I was asking her, you mean in terms of, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So Sari, do you want to answer that? And then Kimberly, feel free to continue to clarify if, or how maybe one of our, let me ask you that too. Once Sari answers how someone knows they're ready, how would somebody with MCAS specifically, like one of our clients or somebody in this audience specifically may know if they're ready for it?
So I thought about this question in advance, and the only thing I could really think of is that willingness would be the criteria. Because if somebody's not willing, or they don't believe it, or they don't want to get well, which is very sad, they're not going to benefit. Mm-hmm. So I've been reading some Joe Dispenza recently, and reading about the placebo effect. And so if someone comes in and they believe that this work is going to help them, I believe this work is going to help them. In terms of contraindications, generally, if somebody has a fresh stroke or a fresh blood clot, I will either delay working with them or I will work more remotely. So somebody who's had a stroke recently, I could spend my time sitting at their feet and helping to calm their nervous system that way. Somebody who is pregnant and able to lie on my table. I've taken a number of women through their pregnancy, and then I love meeting the little wee ones afterwards because they kind of already know me. But if a woman is not able to lie comfortably in any position, then she would not be appropriate. Usually we can find a position supported in some way. I cannot, off the top of my head, think of any other contraindications.
So Kimberly, clinically, who are we typically recommending? How do we know the client is ready for that?
Yeah, well, there needs to be somebody who feels safe enough to go is huge, right? So sometimes people just not feeling safe going to someone and having hands on or hands off even. So there is that safety. We do have clients who, even if they touch like their own ear, they have a flare. So working on that safety piece remotely, I think would make a lot of sense, even one-on-one with a practitioner to try to bring that guard down. But those who see it help most are those who have some kind of structural kind of thing going on where they maybe have done, vagal and limbic work, but they haven't done anything on the structural piece. And that piece is kind of a missing piece, or somebody who has been to chiropractor and it's been too aggressive for them, taking that more gentle approach of just gentle touch, which, sometimes people are like, oh, but it doesn't fix it, but it's the whole inside outside too rough, right? We have so many clients who have EDS and hypermobility, which can really, there can be some injury there for clients who are sensitive that way, for sure. Yeah, in hindsight, when I did my craniosacral therapy, I wish I spoke up more because I would get hives on my neck after. Oh. And I think that was my neck was guarded. The rest of the body was fine. But I think there was some guarding with the nervous system a little bit there. So yeah, would love your insight on something like that.
Well, as we know, our skin is our biggest organ, so it's gonna tell the truth faster than a lot of other things. Although I would imagine that in advance of your body creating the response of hives, that there were other things that were perhaps going on. Perhaps even the color in your face was changing. Perhaps you were breathing more shallowly. Perhaps you were a little bit shaky or quivery or whatever. And so if a practitioner doesn't recognize those things, that can be a little bit problematic. I would definitely, in looking for a practitioner, look for somebody who has had experience working with mast cell, working with toxicities and things like that, because otherwise you can really stir the pot and not know how to calm it down.
Yeah. And for me, it started on the way home. It wasn't there. It's after, like the shift.
The shift may have been on the way home, but the signs some of the signs were probably there.
It's finding those earlier signs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I talk about it for people in terms of being self-aware. It's a fine line between being self-aware and hypervigilant. And so I want people to be aware, when did you feel that little tap on your shoulder, versus saying, well, it came out of nowhere, I got hit by, a 2x4. So that gentle tap on the shoulder. And for me, I also use curiosity. So curiosity comes without judgment. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I like to do in terms of curiosity is that I like to start by saying, because it does two things. One, it makes us curious, takes a little judgment away. And two, it gives our vagus nerve just a little bit of stimulation because it loves humming. Mm. So we've given a little humming vibration. We've toned our vagus nerve a little bit, given us some perspective, and then we can perhaps be more objective with ourselves.
Yeah. We talk about curiosity a lot too.
We do.
Yeah, well, curiosity and judgment are not compatible.
I liked putting the actual saying, like I didn't even think about it, the humming.
Well, I'm obsessed with the vagus nerve. I created a little character a few years ago called Mr. Vagus Nerve, and he's an educational tool designed to teach people about the vagus nerve because it is counterintuitive to a lot of people. People think, oh, if my vagus nerve is all blah out of whack and I'm super anxious, then it means my vagus nerve is overstimulated. Yeah. And it's the opposite. The vagus nerve is undertoned. So Mr. Vagus Nerve over these past few years has taken a journey into his own health and gotten himself healthier. And you can look at his journey at mrvegasnerve.com to see not only how he became healthier, but embedded within each of his little chapters are tips and tricks for helping to gently tone the vagus nerve. And that's what we really need more than anything. I mean, if we have not ever exercised, we're not going to get off the couch and go run a marathon. We have to simply get off the couch first. So just the same, we can't go from having an extremely undertoned vagus nerve and an extremely agitated nervous system to high function. Yeah. We've got to take the steps along the way. And those steps sometimes are really slow and painful. And sometimes you take a step and it's a huge leap to a whole nother chapter.
Yeah. And I will say I see clients also sometimes when they start some nervous system work, they're like, oh no, I think it's not working because I'm like so tired. I'm like, no, that's what it's supposed to do. But it can feel scary if it's so different, or if in the past you had more chronic fatigue kind of thing. So it's like a fear of that symptom of lower energy. But it really can be, right, that it's the system calming and getting into a parasympathetic mode. Yeah,
exactly. And there is such a thing as the energy of calm. You can be energetic and calm simultaneously.
Yes.
So that's really important too.
I want to throw up, since you mentioned Mr. Vagus Nerve. So Sari has put together some resources to share with our audience today. You can find the links to them from her main website. So down below, sarihands.com is the main website, and there's multiple links out there from there. So you can find a practitioner in your area on her page. We also, this is one of the same links that she shares. So we're typically recommending people go to craniosacraltherapy.org. But again, if you just want to explore kind of more about Sari and her resources like Mr. Vagus Nerve or additional vagus nerve resources, you can find that all on her website. Okay. Any last questions, Kimberly, that you have before we go to our audience questions today?
I just had a comment I wanted to add too is, somebody with Mast Cell or somebody sensitive going to a practitioner, it's the same as the titration that we talk about with supplements or foods and things like that, about really talking to someone before you go in even, and like saying, hey, I know the normal length of time might be 45 minutes or an hour or whatever. Could we do a 5 to 10 minute thing? Could we do it in a smaller way and sort of build up from there? And I just want to throw that out there because I think that's a good way to go, especially if you're someone who's like, I don't know if I could do an hour. Or I don't know if I could, start somewhere and start small is huge.
Yeah. You mentioned, the people who aren't ready for this would be somebody who doesn't believe in it. Is there, otherwise anyone is good to go. But if somebody might not be ready or is warming up to the idea of doing it, do either of you, Kimberly included, have any ideas of what people might want to try first if they aren't ready? So, clinically, we're recommending some vagal toning, maybe some limbic work. And then typically if there's a structural component, we'll recommend this. But do either of you have some ideas of what people should look at first?
I mean, I would say are, learning about the nervous system and how it works. So you kind of understand, I think helps, especially for the logical brain, right? Understanding that it's not just magic happening, that it's really neuroscience happening. The more that you understand that piece is huge. So either our course that we have or Primal Trust does a great job, I feel like, educating people in the beginning of their program about the nervous system and understanding it a little bit, then it allows you to kind of like, okay, relax a little bit and not be as fearful.
Yeah. So I threw up our nervous system reboot course for people who don't have any idea of what the nervous system is. You can find our course there at mastcell360.com/mastcell-reboot. That's what Kimberly was just referring to.
There's also a resource that was written for children, but that I think is really helpful because of the way it's written. It's on my vagus nerve resources page, and it's called a printable. So Printable by Lisa, and she has all different ones, but this one is specifically on the nervous system and helps people to just kind of understand a little bit more, but in a very user-friendly, simple way, because sometimes reading or concentrating or absorbing information is really challenging for people when they're dealing with their mast cell.
That's great too, because we have, not only do we have a really brain fog community where the simplicity would be beneficial, but we actually have people asking all the time about resources for children too. So
exactly. And it's kind of fascinating that in a household, that an entire household could be exposed, but not everyone gets sick. And so I find that just super fascinating, and it makes me want to take all of them and do all kinds of studies on them to compare and see, what was it that put this person in the same environment and they came out with a different result.
Yeah.
So I will say I almost happened into this whole world accidentally, because I had a client who came to me for nervous system calming after having exposure to mold and a concussion in close sequence. And because I work with concussion and have done so for a long time, that was a natural thing for me to do. And then he introduced me to Dr. Mary Ackerley down in Tucson, who works with toxicities. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with her. And she had been recommending craniosacral therapy to her patients for quite a while, but didn't have anyone specific. So once he connected with her and connected with me, this kind of unfolded in really fascinating ways that make so much sense with this modality.
Yeah. All right. I'd love to jump into some audience questions. Just quick reminders, if you jumped on late, please keep your question on today's topic, so nervous system, craniosacral, and we're unable to answer in-depth personal health questions, so thanks so much for understanding. All right, I'm going to throw up our first one. How does this compare to the Counterstrain technique? Are you familiar with that? I've never heard of that before.
I've heard of it. I really don't know enough about the technique to compare them. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I'm not sure in Counterstrain, I'm not sure if they're using like a contract relax type of way to get things to relax or not. I think my understanding is that it's much more of a structural approach in the structures rather than in the fluids.
So this person is asking, I get this type of therapy involving vagus nerve to relax TAC nervous system. Peer-reviewed studies on this type of therapy and MCAS. So it's not necessarily massage therapy. So I'll clarify that. But do you know of any peer-reviewed studies specifically for MCAS, either of you?
I have a few resources. It would take me a minute to get to them, so I'd be happy to provide them to you to share in whatever way would be helpful.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll be able to do a blog post. I think we might do a blog post on this, so that might be helpful to put some resources in there for people.
Well, I'm also hoping that this opens the door to having an opportunity to speak with a lot of my colleagues, because this is just us scratching the surface and introducing this modality. But I would love for you to have the opportunity to learn from some of the masters out there who are going to go in a little bit more into the history and things like that, which, you know, obviously we're doing an hour podcast. We can't do it all, but I'm really hoping this is just opening the door to more opportunities for you guys to learn.
Yeah.
No, I'm wondering about like Stanley Rosenberg's book on the vagus nerve. I mean,
well, so Stanley's book is a great book if you can slog through
yes,
the first part of it. I let my clients know that there's a lot of amazing information in there and that they don't need to read every part of part one in order to go into part two and start looking at the exercises.
We do the exact same thing here. We're like, you can read it if you want, but the more powerful thing is trying these 7 exercises yourself and seeing it on yourself.
Yeah.
It's just a low risk way to kind of try some of the vagal stuff.
Exactly. Although somebody with an extremely undertoned vagus nerve may find that they can't even do the basic exercise. So they're
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have trouble with the eye piece.
So Stanley's history is interesting because he learned all kinds of things and then he tied them all together and basically called it the Stanley Rosenzweig Institute. One of my greatest mentors and instructors, Michael Shea, PhD, says, learn the techniques, practice the techniques, and then make them your own. And so, you know, that's something that I think people will find if they start investigating and even interviewing practitioners, is that you're going to find a very, very wide variety in what people have to offer and in their background. Probably physical and occupational therapists are going to maybe typically be practitioners who have gone into a little bit more of the foundation and the science. But there's lots of gifted practitioners out there to help facilitate this healing.
Yeah. And Dr. Kathleen King, who did Primal Trust Academy, is a physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why we like her program so much is because she gives like a smorgasbord of different exercises. And then you can do exactly what you said, is like you pick and choose to then make a routine that meets your lifestyle and the ones that you enjoy. So, you know, there's so many out there. Like you could just Google free vagal toning exercises, right? And you'll get a lot, but you have to actually try them on to decide whether you like it or not. So I always tell people, I'm like, do it for a day or two. If you're just like, oh, well, that doesn't feel safe, then it's not the right tool for you.
Exactly. It's nice to be guided in those things, but you know, we're talking a little bit about those people who are maybe not ready to come in to actually have work done. So it's great that there are at least a variety of resources. I caution people, don't try everything at once.
Exactly. Right.
If we've taken foods away and we're trying to reintroduce, we're not going to introduce the whole smorgasbord of food. So when you have a whole variety of things you can try, don't try them all. You know, try one, see how you do, try it again, see how you do, add one, see how you do. Then you at least know what's helping and what's not.
All right. Our next question is from Dolly. Is it suitable if you have congenital fusion of C2, C3, and other bits and bobs?
Other bits and bobs. Well, Dolly, I'm not sure where you're checking in from, but I don't think I've heard bits and bobs recently in my space. But yes, this is absolutely safe because we are not doing any sort of manipulation. Even with the gentle hands-on therapy I do for manual therapy, I'm just gently mobilizing. So nothing's going to get moved that's not supposed to. It's just going to still, again, be relaxing and restorative.
Sally's asking where you specifically are located.
My office is in Scottsdale, Arizona. But just so you know, I have colleagues all around the country and all around the world that are amazing.
Yeah, just a reminder, you can go to our website and find a practitioner near you using that link. So if you're not in Scottsdale, Arizona, there's opportunities to find this type of work everywhere.
And it's a great place to visit too.
I love Scottsdale.
Well, next time you're here, we'll get together.
Yeah, my parents have a house in Cave Creek. So,
oh, okay.
All right. Deborah's asking, what is the best method for finding a qualified? Oh, sorry, guys. Obviously, you can use the link to find the practitioner, but let's answer this question. Do any cranial folks accept Medicare? Is that something that you know from being in this world?
So I will say that it would be a rare practitioner who does craniosacral therapy and accepts Medicare. The limitations of Medicare and what they allow in terms of time with people, techniques, diagnoses that they treat, and everything is quite limiting. Early on in my career as an occupational therapist, I did work with Medicare. And what I found was that the documentation and requirements of Medicare took away a lot of the magic and the beauty of craniosacral therapy, because we were spending all of our time with the paperwork, and really the client time was suffering for that. So if there was somebody accepting Medicare, you would need to look for either an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. The other practitioners typically are not able to bill Medicare. If you are lucky enough to have an osteopathic physician in your area who actually does craniosacral therapy, that's a great opportunity for billing, although they are few and far between, unfortunately.
Do either of you know if this could help anxiety and tinnitus?
You want to go ahead first, Kim?
Sure. I could see where it would, for sure. It depends on what the root cause is, right? And where that's coming from. But tinnitus can very much be, I know for myself even, and for clients, tied to that vagal nerve, for sure. And then anxiety, for sure. If we're more in a sympathetic state for a reason that is driven by the nervous system, then it certainly could help, or at least take a layer off, even if it's driven by something going on in the body. But I could see where it would help. And I know when I came out of a session, I would always feel super, super relaxed and super just really, really calm. So I would think that it would be depending on you.
Yeah. And we didn't even touch really on the gut-brain connection at all today. I know that's a big thing for you guys, and for me as well. We have techniques in craniosacral therapy to work with the organs, to help the organs to work better together, to help with digestion. Whenever my clients are in my office and they either start yawning, taking deep breaths, or we hear lots of stomach gurgling, it makes me so happy. And I tell them, oh, when we hear these things or notice these, then we say, thank you, Mr. Vagus Nerve, for doing what you're there to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, the stomach gurgling. People are like, oh, I'm alarmed. I hear gurgling noises. I'm like, our stomach is supposed to be moving. Yeah. You want that motility.
Well, rest and digest.
Right? Yeah, it's the opposite of immotility, is to get that going.
Yeah, that ties into the next question of, like we talk about sympathetic fight or flight, or parasympathetic rest and digest in, the two sides of the vagal activation. And Kayla's saying, we've used the word calm in today's conversation, but calm doesn't always mean regulated, and regulated doesn't mean calm/relaxed to her specifically. Can we explain? And I just want to touch on this too, because I say this to clients all the time. A regulated nervous system's not being about being calm. It's about getting to that ventral vagal state of optimal arousal. So you can be excited, but also relaxed at the same time, because you're kind of reached that place where you can feel connected and excited and creative and playful. And sometimes we can be, stuck in that, the freeze state where it is parasympathetic, and we're in hypoarousal, and we actually need to activate. So do either of you want to explain a little bit more or add on to what I just shared?
Yeah, so there can be combo states like you talked about, and it is all about our ability to handle a bigger range of things. and return to and notice where we are and return to a state that we want to be in and have the tools that we can do that. And that's, I think, the combination of like art and science together.
Yeah. We have another. Go ahead.
Oh, that's a fantastic explanation. I also would say that in a sense, calm is one of the required states for regulation. So it might be that getting calm first and recognizing that state is really important to being able to take the next steps to being more regulated overall.
And then we have a question about asking how we can know if our vagus nerve is over or understimulated. Yeah. Do either of you want to answer that?
Almost every vagus nerve that is unhappy is undertoned. Overstimulation of the vagus nerve is not super common. And so I would say in most of the cases, in what I'm seeing, people need to work on gradually toning their vagus nerve and not on calming it down. And again, long COVID, dysautonomia, all these different things all still fall into the same umbrella of all needing to have nervous system calming and regulation.
All right. Would you say craniosacral is a good alternative if chiropractic adjustments are leaving us in more pain than before?
Well, it's a totally different modality. Again, we're comparing a manipulation of a force being applied to you to try to change something in you versus trying to help elicit responses from the inside out. So again, the gentle manual therapy work may be helpful, but it's not forceful. It's slow paced. It's calm. It's safe. So I sometimes compare it to a restaurant. If I went to a restaurant several times and each time that I went, I either had a bad meal or a bad response digesting my meal, how many times would I go back to that restaurant? So if you are leaving chiropractic adjustments each time in more pain, how many times do you want to go to that restaurant?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Okay, so can either biodynamic or biomechanical craniosacral help with MCAS? Practitioner, your mom knows practitioner, but you're not sure which type. So we're typically recommending biodynamic for MCAS. And then we shared some resources. So if the one that your mom knows is not that method and you wanted to try one, you could use the resource to find somebody in your area.
I would also say that there are a lot of great results that people can get from biomechanical craniosacral therapy, and people have a very broad array of experience and talents that they bring to that modality. So I think interviewing the practitioner with that is going to be really helpful. If someone says, do you work with people with MCAS at all or with Mast Cell? And they're like, what? Then you might say, okay, we might get some benefits from this, but we might also be in a situation where this practitioner and does not have the ability to calm it back down.
Yeah, that was great advice. Deborah's saying when she gets craniosacral from her osteopath, his fingers get hot. He tells me his hands are normally cold, but the heat comes from the energy. Do you notice that? She's asking if you notice that.
I personally do not direct any sort of temperature in my treatments. If my hands get hot, it's generally because they are receiving the heat from tissues releasing. So when energy releases, if you made your fist in a tight fist for an extended period of time, when you open it up, it's going to be warm inside. So again, I do not personally direct energy. It's more a matter of receiving the temperature of the release.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't know if everyone else does, but that makes sense to me. All right. Kelly's, I think this might be our last question. I'll take one more look because we're at time. So she's asking for clarification on stimulating the vagus nerve. Is that calming it?
It really sounds counterintuitive, and I understand that confusion. However, again, it's like your vagus nerve has been sitting on a sofa doing nothing for an extended period of time, and it has no tone, no exercise, nothing that's been done to help to stimulate it or to wake it up. So very gentle stimulation of the vagus nerve, which can be done on your own through humming and massaging and lots of other things, or through an external device, will help to stimulate the vagus nerve to strengthen it. And strengthening the vagus nerve calms it.
Yeah, I like to explain it to clients as we're building that window of tolerance by doing the exercise for the vagus nerve. We create the muscle memory so that we can ground back down and become calm faster. We get back to our baseline quicker after the stressful event because we can't avoid stress. Like stress will occur in our lives. There's too much outside of our control. So it's about doing the work to build the resilience so that we can be calm more often.
Exactly. And I before we started today, I told the panel that I used my personal external vagus nerve device for a few minutes before we started the podcast to get myself less nervous. And I've been using it enough, and I work with the vagus nerve enough that sometimes I just have to say the word vagus and I take a deep breath. Or I just have to pick up the device and think I'm going to stimulate my vagus nerve, and already I take a deep breath and I feel myself calming. So I will say that the more time you spend in it, the more time you will find yourself in it, and will find that regulation and that restoration.
We had one more question come in. I know we're at time. Are you okay to answer one more?
I am okay. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm sorry that landscapers just showed up.
All right, last question. How long to wait between sessions, especially if you're doing chiropractic work, physical therapy, craniosacral, and breath work at home? Kayla's saying it's hard not to overdo it. I think it's a great question because
I understand that you want to do all the things, and each of the things are going to have a different goal, but all of those things are going to have a bearing on your nervous system. So being overscheduled is never going to help you improve. Thinking that you need to rush to get to your craniosacral therapy sessions so that you can help calm your nervous system is counterproductive. So I encourage my clients to not do any other modalities on the same day so that they can see how they're doing and what they're tolerating. And if people are starting to get a little bit overwhelmed on their schedule, then I encourage them to back off a little bit and do a little bit more of limited home programs. I'm in favor of often doing what is the least amount necessary to get the maximum results. Our time is valuable, and especially when you're not feeling well, it feels overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, the day's almost over and now I have to hurry and meditate or something like that. It's just a matter of finding your balance and not overdoing your system.
Yeah. All right, well, let's leave the audience with some pearls of wisdom, let's say. Is there anything you'd like to leave everyone today with, a short message?
I'm going to leave people with a short exercise that is helpful for their posture, and it's just helpful for your overall being present. So 4 parts to it. First part is to tap your feet. So if you're listening right now, you can do that. Alternate tapping your feet. So when you tap your feet or cross your midline, it helps the 2 hemispheres of the brain work better together. So we first tapped our feet to get ourselves a little more grounded. And then you stand up really straight, like you have a string from the top of your head, like a puppet. So you're not pulling your head back. You're just going long, long, long up the spine from the back of your belly button up to your head to just get nice and long and counteract that posture that we in so much of the time. And then the third part is to open your arms. So you can just take your arms and open them to the sides. They can be lower or higher, but it's not a shoulder stretch. It's just something to get you open in your chest, your lungs, and get your shoulder blades moving. And then the fourth part of that is to take a breath. So lots of great breath work out there. We're just going to do 1 in, 1 out. And what happens then in about 10 seconds, you tap your feet to get more grounded. You are a puppet to get more upright. You are open, and that breath brings you to center and the present moment. And presence is where healing exists.
I like that one.
There it is. You can find that one in what's in your newsletter. I mean, what's in your file cabinet in my newsletters.
Kimberly, do you have anything you want to share?
I think just that last question that was about how do I do all the things is the shift of how can I pick the thing that I'm going to focus on now and kind of go with that and doing that consistently, because I know that it's like the consistency piece that also builds safety of continually showing up for ourselves, even when it's hard, even if it's just for a few minutes every day, can make a bigger shift than trying to do all the things and feeling really stressed about it.
Well said.
Yeah, doing like one thing imperfectly more often than doing one big thing perfectly once a week, right?
Yeah, or searching for all the things outside of ourselves too.
I just want to throw up here real quick as we get ready to sign off, just a reminder that we are in the holiday season, and this time can be really hard for so many people asking for gifts or also giving gifts to people that are safe for MCAS. So maybe you want to gift a loved one a craniosacral appointment. But also we're highlighting, last week or 2 weeks ago, because we were off for Thanksgiving, we highlighted Purity Coffee. Today we're going to highlight essential oil for holiday self-care. So there's a histamine blend from Vibrant Blue Oils that we really like. It can help clear with breathing, reduce inflammation, reduce, histamine reactions. If you are really sensitive, you don't have to put it on you. You can even just smell it. The creator of Vibrant Blue Oils, I follow her. She uses histamine balance in a little dish of salt by her bedside to kind of clean the air. So again, you don't have to put these oils on. If you're more sensitive, you can use them aromatically. But if you're really sensitive, always starting with a single oil, like lavender and frankincense are both really calming ones for people with mast cell if you do tolerate them, right? Everyone is so different. But they are doing a bottle of the histamine balance for only $19.95, which would be a great stocking stuffer. And you can find that at mastcell360.com/histamine balance is our link for you guys there. And just a reminder, if you are looking for that personalized one-on-one support, you can find out how to work with Mast Cell 360 practitioners at mastcell360.com/application. We do have a limited number of strategy sessions available for the remainder of December. But if you're looking for more of that long-term approach with health coaching and lead practitioner support, the advanced track would be a great option for you. And again, you can apply at mastcell360.com/application. And I'll just throw up Sari's link one more time for those who are looking to see how they can find her or her resources, and that's at sarihands.com. All right, everyone. So nice to be with you all today. We will be back next week with Stephen Wright from Healthy Gut, one of our favorites. We briefly mentioned today how important the gut-brain connection is. So when you support the gut, you're also supporting the brain. And so we look forward to having that conversation. Thank you, Sari, so much for being here, Kimberly as well. And thank you all for being either live with us or catching the replay. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.